This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Most kinds of rose plants come from Asia, but roses are also native to other areas, including Northwest Africa, Europe, and the United States. In 1986, Congress chose the rose as America's national flower. Technically, Congress and President Ronald Reagan declared it the national floral emblem. Whatever the name, the decision did not smell sweet to supporters of other popular flowers. Some people say roses are difficult to grow, but you have a good chance of success if you start with a few suggestions from experts. You should plant your roses where they can get sunshine for about 6 hours on bright days. You can buy roses from a garden center or by mail order. You can buy potted roses, also known as container roses or bare root plants. Each kind has its fans. Some gardeners say potted roses are easier to plant. They say the roots develop better. But Jeffrey Dinslage, president of Nature Hills Nursery in Omaha, Nebraska, points out that bare root roses come without soil, so they weigh less to transport. The University of Illinois Extension advises getting bare root roses as close to planting time as you can. If they arrive before you are ready to plant them, make sure the packing material is moist. Keep the plants in a cool, dark place. You plant the roses while they are dormant. The resting plants have no leaves but still need water. When growing roses, the soil should feel moist deep down. Watering should be done in the morning. That can prevent problems called black spot and mildew. But do not water too much. Jeffrey Dinslage says people often ask him about unhealthy discoloration on rose leaves. He says the spots are usually caused by too much water. After heavy rains or too much watering, he advises pulling away mulch temporarily from around the roots. This will help dry the soil. In normal conditions, placing mulch around rose plants is a good idea. Mulch suppresses weeds and holds moisture in the soil. You can use mulch made from bark, pine needles, cottonseed, or oak leaves. If your soil is very dry, you can add peat or compost, which returns nutrients to the soil. If aphids, thrips, or other insects invade your rose bushes, you may be able to force them off with just a strong spray of water. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Tell us about your experience with roses. You can write comments at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. People have grown chrysanthemums for more than 2,000 years. Chinese and other Asian cultures make tea with the flowers. But mums also make bright and colorful gardens. One basic kind of mum is the hardy or garden mum. The other basic kind is the florist mum. The garden mum is better able to handle different growing conditions than the florist mum. There are many varieties of mums. The decorative mum is often seen in gardens. Another popular type, the quill mum, has long straight petals like a tube or needle. Chrysanthemum blooms can be white, yellow, gold, red, or other colors. The plants often grow to 1 meter in height. The soil should be kept moist but well drained so it does not get too wet. Newly planted mums should be watered 2 or 3 times a week depending on conditions. Plants established in the ground may do well just with normal rainfall. In dry conditions, they will need more water. Mums grow best in full sunshine. They produce colorful blooms when days get shorter and nights get longer. The life cycle of the plant depends on the amount of daylight. This is why experts advise against placing mums near night lights or street lights. The light may interfere with their normal growth cycle. The plants may develop buds too soon. In climates where temperatures fall below freezing, plant mums at least 6 weeks before the first frost is expected. That way, the plants will be well established for cold weather. Placing mulch around the plants can protect them from the cold. Doug Akers from the Cooperative Extension Service at Purdue University in Indiana suggests straw or shredded leaves for the mulch. The material will also add nutrients to the soil. Some gardeners say the most beautiful presentation comes from planting mums close together. But they also advise leaving enough space between the plants so air can flow. If not, the chance of disease may increase. To get more blooms, gardeners pinch back the branches when new growth has extended to 15 centimeters. Squeeze about 5 to 7 centimeters off each branch. Pinch again when a branch grows another 12 to 15 centimeters. Stop pinching about 100 days before you want the plants to bloom. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. You can find all of our reports with transcripts and MP3s at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also comment on your own experience growing mums.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. There's always work to do in a garden, but some plants need less work than others. Beets are a root vegetable that do not need a lot of care. People might think beets are always dark red, but they can also be pink, yellow, or white. Beets are high in nutrients, including folate, iron, and fiber. They can be used fresh or frozen, canned or pickled. And not just the root, but also the tops can be eaten. The leaves make good salads when the plants are young, and the greens can be cooked when the plants are older. Beets like cool temperatures between 16 and 18 degrees Celsius. They grow best in full sun and in loose soil that is not too wet. Remove stones from the soil while preparing the ground. And test the soil before adding lime and fertilizer. Some experts say the best fertilizers for beets are low in nitrogen. Beet seeds can be planted as soon as the soil is able to be worked at the start of the growing season. Planting them every 2 to 3 weeks will provide a continuous harvest into the fall. A horticulture specialist at Iowa State University suggests planting the seeds a little more than 1 centimeter deep. They should be planted in rows that are spaced 30 to 46 centimeters apart. Overcrowding the plants will mean that the roots cannot spread out and grow. Thin the beets by removing the smaller ones. These can be used as greens. The only work needed once beets have been thinned is weeding, and when the weather is dry, a weekly watering. For best results, beets should be picked when they are 4 to 5 centimeters across. Beets much larger than that can be tough and have to be cooked for a long time. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Beets are a tasty root vegetable that do not require much work in the garden. People might think beets are always dark red, but they can also be pink, yellow, or white. Beets with circles of red and white inside are known as candy cane or candy stripe beets. Beets are high in nutrients, including folate, iron, and fiber. They can be eaten fresh or frozen, canned or pickled. And not just the root, but also the tops can be eaten. The leaves make good salads when the plants are young, and the greens can be cooked when the plants are older. Beets like cool temperatures, between 16 and 18 degrees Celsius. They grow best in full sun and in loose soil that is not too wet. Remove stones from the soil while preparing the ground. And test the soil before adding lime and fertilizer. Some experts say the best fertilizers for beets are low in nitrogen. Beets need the acidity level in the soil to be 6 to 7.5. Beet seeds can be planted as soon as the soil is able to be worked at the start of the growing season. Planting them every 2 to 3 weeks will provide a continuous harvest into the fall. Iowa State University horticultural specialist Cindy Haynes suggests planting the seeds a little more than 1 centimeter deep. They should be planted in rows that are spaced 30 to 46 centimeters apart. A beet seed is a fruit containing several seeds. Overcrowding the plants will mean that the roots cannot spread out and grow. Thin the beets by removing the smaller ones. These can be used as greens. Cindy Haynes says little or no fertilizer is needed in fertile soils. But once the seeds are planted, she does suggest covering the soil with a little mulch to protect it during rains and dry periods. She also suggests putting a fence around the plants to keep away rabbits and deer. She says the only work needed once beets have been thinned is weeding, and when the weather is dry, a weekly watering. For best results, beets should be picked when they are 4 to 5 centimeters across. Beets much larger than that can be tough and have to be cooked for a long time. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. For more gardening advice, go to voaspecialenglish.com. VOA's daily source of news and information for people learning English.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report. Some people say eating hot chili peppers can help you breathe easier if you have a cold. Others believe that chilies give you more energy. All we know is that people have been growing chilies for centuries, and there are plenty of different kinds of chili peppers to choose from. Want to spice up your meals with homegrown chilies? They need a warm climate. If you plant the seeds outside when the weather is cool, place a glass over them. That will add warmth from the sun and protect them from wind. You can also start the seeds in your home or a greenhouse. If you plant chili peppers inside, fill an 8-centimeter pot with soil. The pot should have holes on the bottom so water can run out. Drop seeds over the surface of the container and cover with a thin layer of vermiculite. Vermiculite is a material that can hold air, water, and nutrients. Then cover the top of the pot with a see-through plastic bag. Hold the bag in place with a rubber band. Place the pot in a warm area. You should take off the bag when the chilies start growing. When the plants have reached about 2 centimeters high, place each one in its own pot. When the roots show through the holes on the bottom of the pot, transplant each seedling into a 12-centimeter pot. When the plants are 20 centimeters high, tie the plants to a stick placed in the pot to support them. When the chili peppers are 30 centimeters high, pull off the tops with your fingers. That should get new branches to grow. When the first flowers show, give the plants some potash fertilizer. When the weather is warm, put them into 5-liter pots and place them outside. Make sure they get lots of light and water. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Onions come in different sizes, shapes, colors, and flavors, from mild and sweet to hot and strong. A full-grown onion plant has roots, bulbs, and leaves. The leaves are long, thin, and hollow. They stand straight up and thicken at the bottom to form a bulb. Onions are biennials. Their life cycle is 2 years long, but they are usually picked during their first year before flowers form and the bulbs stop growing. Onions grow best in loose, fertile soil. They can grow in many different climates. In cooler climates, onions may need 14 to 15 hours of daylight to start forming bulbs. In warmer climates, onions can begin developing bulbs with fewer hours of sun. Barbara Fick is an agriculture expert with Oregon State University. She says a faster way to grow onions is to plant what are called sets. She says onion sets are actually small plants, so growing them does not take as long. Organic material like compost or leaf mulch can help onions grow in heavy soil. The bulbs can be pulled from the ground once their tops have dried and fallen over. Onions can be stored for months,
But Barbara Fick says stored onions need to be cured first. Curing is a way of making sure those leaves on the outside are nice and dry, she says. Here are some directions from the National Gardening Association. First, dry the onions in the sun for a day or so. Then bring them out of direct sun for 2 to 3 weeks. Spread them out in any warm, airy place that is covered. Or cover the onions securely with a light cotton sheet. The sheet will keep the sun from burning the bulbs. Do not worry about rain, and do not use a plastic or canvas sheet. Heavy coverings will trap moisture and keep the onions from drying fully. Turn the bulbs a couple of times to help them dry evenly. After curing the onions, you can hang them indoors in mesh bags to dry even more. There should be no wet spots on the onions when they are put in storage. The National Gardening Association says the longer onions are cured, the better they will keep. Some people cut off the top leaves before curing onions. If you do that, do not cut the leaves any closer than 2.5 centimeters from the bulb. That will keep the top of the onion from drying out and spoiling in storage. For more about gardening, go to voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Special English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Many people have lettuce in a salad at the beginning of a meal. The ancient Egyptians and Romans had it at the end. Either way, gardening experts say lettuce is one of the easiest vegetables to grow in a garden. There are hundreds of kinds of head and leaf lettuces, besides the most popular choices, like iceberg, Boston, Bibb, and romaine. The best time to plant the seeds is during cool weather. Gardening advisors at the University of Illinois Extension say the best planting temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. You can use a seed tray to start the seeds indoors. The container should be deep enough to hold at least 3 centimeters of soil. Leave about 1 centimeter of space between the soil and the top of the container. The container should have holes in the bottom so extra water can flow out. Cover the seeds lightly with soil. If the soil is not already a little wet, give it some water, but not too much. Too much water could drown the seeds. Next, cover the seed tray with paper. Remove the paper when the seedlings are tall enough to touch it. You can transplant the seedlings into the garden when they are about 2 to 3 centimeters tall. Do this when the weather is not too hot and not too cold. Take out as much of the soil as you can with the seedlings. Plant them in the ground in a hole that is bigger than the lettuce roots. Keep the plants watered, but not too heavily. Planting seeds every week or 2 will provide a continuous supply of lettuce to harvest. Harvest leaf lettuces when the leaves are big enough to eat. Pull the leaves from the outside of the plant so the inner leaves will keep growing. Or cut off the whole plant, but leave about 2 or 3 centimeters, so it will regrow. Cut off head lettuces at ground level. Lettuce is best when served fresh. The remainder should be stored in a refrigerator in a plastic bag. Do you grow lettuce or other greens in your garden? Share your gardening stories at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also download daily MP3s and texts of programs to read, listen, and learn English, and much more. Check out the interactive learning in the classroom section. And you can also find us at the VOA Learning English page on Facebook and in the podcast section on iTunes. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Some people like to start their dinner with a salad of lettuce or other leafy greens. Ancient Egyptians and Romans also liked to have lettuce with their evening meal, but they served it at the end. There are hundreds of kinds of head and leaf lettuces. The most popular ones include head lettuces such as iceberg, Boston, Bibb, and romaine. Experts say lettuce is one of the easiest vegetables to grow in your garden. The best time to plant the seeds is during cool weather. Advisors at the University of Illinois Extension say the best planting temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. Lettuce seeds are small, so do not place them too deep in the ground. If you plant some seeds every week or two, you will have harvests ready to eat one after another. You can use a seed tray to start the seeds indoors. The container should be deep enough to hold at least 3 centimeters of soil. There should be about 1 centimeter of space between the soil and the top of the container. The container should have holes in the bottom so extra water can flow out. Drop the seeds over the surface and cover them lightly with soil. If the soil is not already a little wet, give it some water, but not too much. You do not want to drown the seeds. Next, cover the seed tray with paper. Remove the paper when the seedlings have grown up far enough to touch it. You can transplant the seedlings into the garden when they are about 2 to 3 centimeters tall. Do this when the weather is not too hot and not too cold. Take out as much of the soil as you can with the seedlings. Plant them in the ground in a hole that is bigger than the lettuce roots. Keep the plants watered, but not too heavily. Harvest leaf lettuces when the leaves are big enough to eat. Pull the leaves from the outside of the planting so the inside leaves will keep growing. Or you can cut off the whole plant. Leave about 2 or 3 centimeters above the ground so the plant will regrow. Cut off head lettuces at ground level. Lettuce is best when served fresh. Store the remainder in the refrigerator in a plastic bag. It will last a few days and sometimes longer. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Transcripts and podcasts of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also comment on our reports, and You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Farmers know that if you reduce harmful insects and diseases in your crops, you have a chance for a better harvest. Today, many farmers and experts praise Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. IPM is a series of choices and methods to control insects, diseases, and fungi. The program provides current information on how pests live and act in the environment. A number of non-governmental and other organizations in many countries provide education in IPM. Farmers can get information meant for the needs of their own land. They can learn to recognize possible problems and how to plan crops to help prevent failures. Paul Jepson heads the Integrated Plant Protection Center at Oregon State University. He says farmers who have attended field schools in Asia and Africa have increased the use of IPM. And he says this has cut pesticide use. James Frederick is an IPM expert with Clemson University's PD Research and Educational Center in South Carolina. He says one basic IPM method is to plant as early in the season as possible so that most of the crop will be in by the time a disease or pest arrives. Not all insects are pests. Some are helpful. IPM programs help farmers learn to identify different kinds. Another IPM method is rotating crops. Farmers do not plant the same crop season after season in the same soil. Instead, they may plant corn one season, soybeans the next, then corn again. Brenda Vandermeer is also with Clemson University. She says farmers should not endlessly work the same soil without putting back some organic matter. James Frederick says farmers need information about what crops are best to plant. He says that sometimes disease-resistant crops will reduce harvests. He said a last choice would be chemical control. But he suggests using management methods first. Another possible method of pest control is using genetically modified plants. They have had their genes changed to contain a special characteristic, like resistance to certain insects. Brenda Vandermeer says she believes improvements in plants can be very helpful. She noted the example of genetic engineering that makes rice more nutritious by producing beta-carotene. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can read and download our programs at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. George Ballas of Houston, Texas, lived a long life. He was a businessman and property developer, a university lecturer and author, a dancer and dance studio owner whose son Corky and grandson Mark followed in his footsteps into the dance world. And Mr. Ballas was the inventor of the weed eater. The man who found an easier way for people to cut grass and weeds died in Houston on June 25th. He was 85 years old. George Ballas was born in Louisiana. He joined the military at 17. He served in World War II and the Korean War. After the military, he became a dance teacher and executive in the dance school industry. In the 1950s, he built a dance studio of his own in Houston. People called it the biggest in the world. Dance City, USA had 120 teachers. Mr. Ballas sold the studio in 1964. By the early 70s, he was on to the next big thing. The idea had come to him at a car wash. He watched the needle-like bristles of the brushes as they went round and round against his car. Could a similar idea be used to cut grass in places out of reach of someone pushing a lawnmower? To find out, he placed lengths of fishing line through holes in a tin can. He attached the can to the spinning part of a motorized grass edger. The result? A revolution for millions of people who cut grass for a living or just to keep their neighbors happy. George Ballas became known as the Weed King. And he once told the Houston Chronicle, "A weed eater comes along once in a lifetime." His invention grew into a company which he later sold. Today, his idea lives on in a new generation of string trimmers and edgers that people often call weed whackers. The noise may not be the nicest, but neither is a loud mower. Trimmers work well in corners and along walls and fences. They also avoid the use of chemicals and the labor of pulling weeds by hand. Of course, in the wrong hands, a weed whacker can do damage like any other power tool. The high-speed cutting line can whack pieces out of trees, wood fences, stone surfaces, or bird baths. In 1952, George Ballas married Maria Luisa Miralanda, a flamenco dancer and film actress. They were together for 59 years until his death. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. You can find Voice of America's daily news and information service for people learning English at voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. 10 years ago, David Masika bought a cotton mill in Eastern Province, Kenya. Mekueni Ginneries was operating with technology from the 1960s. It produced only 200 kilos of cotton in its first year under new ownership. Last year, it sold 600,000 kilos, or about 1,000 bales, earning its first profit since Mr. Masika bought it. World prices for cotton are up, but he worried that he might not have enough cotton to process if he invested in new technology. We got into this vicious circle where we then were wondering, do I completely modernize this thing when I do not know whether the cotton is coming? About a year ago, as the cotton supply in Kenya started increasing, he started modernizing half the machinery. Mekueni is one of only 4 modern ginneries in the country. Kenya's cotton industry used to be strong, but almost 20 years ago, a government agency collapsed. That agency had provided growers with a guaranteed price for cotton. Without that support, prices fell, and so did production. Today, Kenya is part of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. AGOA is an American law, first signed in 2000, It provides duty-free and quota-free treatment for certain clothing and other products from Africa. Kenya says its clothing exports tripled from 2001 to 2006. But Kenya's cotton and textile industry is concerned about meeting future requirements of the law. AGOA countries have been operating under what is called a third country fabric provision. This lets them use yarns and fabrics made in any country, not just AGOA countries. But starting next September, those countries must be able to find the raw materials for their products regionally. Kenya's cotton industry wants the United States Congress to extend the third country fabric provision. Micah Poan is chief executive of the Cotton Development Board. He says, if we get an extension period of 2 or 3 years by AGOA, I confidently say that we will be able to produce enough cotton to meet local demand to qualify for the AGOA market. African countries face not only a limited cotton supply and poor machinery, they also face problems with making cotton into fabric to produce clothing. Under AGOA, fabric is considered a raw resource that has to come from African countries instead of places like China. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Florida, in the southeastern United States, is called the Sunshine State. It grows more oranges than any place except Brazil. But in January, extremely cold air damaged some Florida oranges and strawberries and killed fish at tropical fish farms. The unusually long period of cold weather has shown how even warm climates can sometimes freeze over. But protecting plants and trees in the garden may not be too difficult if you follow a few suggestions. Sudden cold can be the biggest threat, especially after a warm period. Plants have not had a chance to harden their defenses. Those that are actively growing or flowering are at high risk. Try to choose plants that live best with cold weather and plant them in areas that face west and south. Being near other growth may also provide warmth. Most frost damage takes place at night. Ice crystals form on the leaf surface. They pull moisture from the leaves and keep plant tissues from getting water. Cold weather is most likely to damage or kill plants that do not have enough moisture. So keep the garden watered. Moist soil absorbs more heat than loose, dry soil covered with mulch or vegetation. University of Arizona Extension experts say covering plants and small trees with cloth or paper can help prevent frost damage. A 100-watt light bulb designed for outdoor use can also provide warmth. Some people place Christmas lights on young trees for warmth. The bulbs should hang below the leaves to let the heat rise into the tree. Cold is especially dangerous to citrus trees. Agricultural specialists at the University of California suggest putting paper or cloth around the trunk and central branches of young citrus trees. In Florida, as temperatures fell to record lows, citrus growers sprayed water on their trees to help prevent freeze damage. Jim Botcher is a master gardener with the University of Florida Extension. He explains that as the water freezes, it produces heat, and the ice forms a protective blanket around the tree. If you spray a tree, keep the water away from nearby power lines. Heavy ice can form and break them. You can also wrap a tree in palm tree frond leaves, corn stalks, or fiberglass. Adding plastic film works well in rain and snow. But experts say plastic alone does not help much. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. More gardening and agricultural advice is at voaspecialenglish.com.